Good morning, everybody. So my first video didn't work, apparently. So I'm going to try to take 2 of this. So you guys have been working with all operation of integers, but I think we need some more practice with multiplying integers. I think some of my classes have already received this practice. However, I want y'all to go back, show all your work. A big pet peeve of mine is just writing down the answers. So we're going to put some notes on this, and yours should look exactly like mine. If not, I'm going to take off points. So here we go. So I think you guys have been using the Dorita Man. It can look like this. I think this is how you guys have been drawing it, which is totally fine. I just like to call him Dorita Man. I turn him around. And this is my Dorita Man. Okay? And today is 9-1. So another strategy you can use, which you might like, is tic-tac-toe, except in math we like to do something weird and P on the diagonal. If you come into class, this might already be on your board and you're like, what in the world is this? Well, this is what it means. So in tic-tac-toe, you connect the 3. So if you had a positive times a negative, your answer would be a negative. Same thing as Dorita Man, just a different concept, different strategy. All right, so let's start going through this. And again, I'm going to add notes to mine because I know some of you probably just copied down what the teacher did, which is fine. However, where are you learning from it? Exactly. So anytime you see parentheses, that's a dead giveaway we're going to be doing multiplication. So we're going to do -4 times 6. Now, there's no sign in front of my 6, so that tells me it's a positive. It's kind of like a give me. If you're not wanting to put a positive here, that's okay. However, if it helps you, why not do it? So using Dorita Man, a negative times a positive is a negative. And for your multiplication tables, here we go. 4 times 6 is 24. So a negative times a positive is a negative. You can write it out numerous ways, but these are just reminders. This is what I should be seeing on your paper. If you're just writing -24, that's cool. However, this is not a test, and I need to see your work. Yes, I was one of those students. I could do all the math in my head, but guess what? Now as a teacher, I got to see my work too. All right, number 2. -2, parentheses just means multiplication, times a -8. So a negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 8 is 16. So nothing new so far. This is just technically review. So 12, you could put a positive there. There's nothing out front, but I can put a positive there. Nothing wrong with that. Times a -4 equals, and positive times a negative is a negative. 12 times 4 is 48. -6, parentheses, it's a +5. I'm going to put my little positive to help remind me. A negative times a positive is a negative. So if they're different and you're multiplying, it should be negative. If it's the same sign, it will be a positive. That's another way to think of it too. 6 times 5 is 30. All right, let's do the next one. -10 times a -9. So this is one of those cases where it's the same sign. A negative times a negative, since they're the same, you'll have a positive answer. 1 times 9 is 9 and 0. That's one of those zero strategies. Just do your front number. You get your front value, and then bring over that 0. So that way you don't have to think, oh, I have to add 10 9 times. What in the world is this thingamabobber? This is what we call an exponent. All this means is whatever is inside of the parentheses, I'm going to multiply it that many times. So, also notice Your negative, yes, I like to color code, is out front. It's not included inside the parentheses. So I'm not going to multiply that many times. So let's rewrite this. I have a negative. If there's nothing out there, that technically is a -1, like a placeholder, times a +5, because it's a +5 inside, and I need to multiply that twice, times a +5. Yes, you're multiplying 3 different values here. So here we go. A negative times a positive times a positive is a negative. So this whole part right here is negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. All right. What's weird about number 7? Look at number 6. Look at number 7. We still have that crazy exponent. But what is different? If you're looking at the negative, this time it is on the inside. So here it was the outside. This one is the inside, going to the right. So here I'm going to include that negative when multiplying. So it's not just a +5. I got to multiply -5 times a -5. So it's the same sign. So it's going to be positive, or negative times a negative is a positive. So you get a +25. All right, let's keep going. -30 times 5, +5. A negative times a positive is a negative. So here's that zero strategy again. 3 times 5 is 15. Bring over that 0. Your answer is a -150. I don't have to use a calculator on this because we all know the calculator inactive section on that EOG takes us the longest. So let's do the next one. 20. There's nothing out front, so technically it's a +20, so I'm going to write a positive there just to remind me, times a -6. All right, let's do that zero strategy. 2 times 6 is 12. Bring over that 0. A positive times a negative is a negative. Because if you don't put that negative on your answer, that changes our whole entire answer. Because if you think of a number line, negatives are to the left of the 0, positives are to the right. So these are two sides of the number line, two completely different answers. All right, let's look at number 10. -14 times a -6. A negative times a negative is a positive. 14 times 6 is 84. And no, you don't have to put the positive in your answer. You could write it like this or just 84. That's totally your choice. However, if it helps you, this counts as the same exact answer. Okay, moving the paper up just a tad. Okay, I'm going to bring Dorito Man back down here. Negative, positive. All right, here's that weird circumstance, just like number 7. I like to color code, so if you want to bring colors to math, that's totally fine. The negative is inside of my parenthesis. So this would be -13 times a -13. Okay, a negative times a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, and 13 times 13. Think about it. What is the same thing as 13 squared? What would that answer be? Anybody got any guesses? See, look, I'm teaching and I'm not even there. It's 169. Okay. All right, let's do the next one. Negative 7 times a positive 15. A negative times a positive. Negative times positive is a negative. Your answer is negative 105. So again, if we're including, there's the next little vocab word, expression. Now, you might have seen this before. How is an expression different from an equation? Well, an equation has an equal sign. Well, I don't see none of that, Miss McCraw. Okay, well, guess what? You're not really solving for it. You're just setting it up to look a different way. So it's the same thing we've been doing, except they like to put these little letters, which we call variables. Those are going to represent, eventually, coming up next, a value. So we're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing. Nothing new. So here we go. So let's rewrite it. Negative 3 times a positive 4y. Okay. Well, a negative times a positive is a negative. 3 times 4 is 12. Well, what do I do with this y? Well, you just bring it down. So your answer is negative 12y. This is the same thing as negative 12 times y. When you have a number and a variable touching each other, that means, kind of like a sandwich, there's multiplication in between here. So this is 12 times whatever y is going to represent. So it's the same thing you've been doing. We're just going to throw in something new. All right, let's try number 14. I have a 7. I'm going to make it a positive times a negative 3x. Same thing we've been doing. So a positive times a negative. Positive times negative is a negative. Negative 21x. Okay, let's look at number 16. Oh, sorry, 15. I don't know my numbers. All right, 7 is a positive times 5g. So a positive times a positive, well, you always positive. So that's a positive. 7 times 5 is 35. And bring over your g. If it helps you, you can just write it like this and just do an arrow underneath your variable so you don't leave it out in your answer. Again, I can do that up here if that helps you. All right, number 16. We're all positive, no little negatives. So your answer's got to be positive. So 7 times 7w. 7 times 7 is 49. And I can't forget my w. All right, let's look at 17. 3 is positive times a negative 3y. Positive times negative is a negative. 3 times 3 is 9. Remember, we're multiplying, not adding. 3 times 3 is 9. And bring over my variable. Number 18. Negative 2 times a negative 10h. Okay, a negative times a negative, they're the same, so it's got to be positive. 2 times 10 is 20. And then bring over my variable, which is an h. So 20h. Remember, you don't have to put the plus. This could be just 20h. That's totally fine. However, I need to be seeing your work. Yes, I know we're using parentheses, and this is simple. However, I need to see that you're setting it up to where this is multiplication in between. You should have an answer. If you're just writing down negative 12y, 35g, negative 9y, that's not going to count. I need to see this, please. All right. So now we're just going to step it up just a tad. Again, I'll let you use colors. Okay. So here, what if not only am I going to use a variable, but they give me some missing values for those variables? Well, let's just plug in what we know. So for G, it is -5. So for number 19, this is the same thing as -3 times G. Remember, they're sandwiched together. They're touching. So I'm going to plug in that -5 for G. So it's -3 times a -5. Well, this is simple. I know how to do this now using Dorita Man. I'm going to rewrite Dorita Man again. A negative times a negative. Negative times negative is a positive. 3 times 5 is 15. So your answer is a positive 15. H for number 20 is representing -3. So 5, and it's positive, times H. Remember, we're going to plug in that -3 for that value. So positive 5 times a -3. Well, 5 times 3 is 15. A positive times a negative is a negative because they're different. So your answer is a -15. Make sure you include those negatives if it is a negative answer, because it's two different sides of the number line, two completely different answers. Oh my. So 21. Here, what's different? We got two variables, but there's no operation. So it's all sandwiched together. So it's all together. So we need to break it apart. So if you don't see an operation, it's implied that multiplication is there. So I can simply rewrite this as 7 times G times K. So my G was -5. My K is 4. So let's rewrite it. 7, which was positive, times a -5 times 4. And that was positive. So a positive times a negative is negative. Positive times negative is negative. So this whole first part is negative. A negative times a positive 4, so a negative times a positive 4 is a negative. And when you multiply a 7 times 5 is 35. 35 times 4 is 140. All right, here we go. -2, same thing. It's a sandwich, break it apart. -2 times G times H. That was a little friendlier. We got our value for G. We got our value for H. So plug it in. -2 times a -5 times a -3. So a negative times a negative times a negative is a positive. So this whole part right here is positive. So a positive times a negative is negative. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 3 is 30. So your answer is -30. All right, number 23. We have a -10 times H. So we're going to plug in our value for H. -10 times a -3. A negative times a negative is a positive. You don't have to write it, but I'm going to just to kind of keep us in motion. 10 times 3 is 30. So your answer is a positive 30. All right, what's weird about number 24? We got our little friend exponent. So this is the same thing as H. Well, we know what H is now, so we just plug it in. So I'm going to rewrite this as -2 times H times H. So I know I have to multiply h by itself twice, judging by our exponent. So I'm going to rewrite it like this so I don't forget an h. So negative 2 times a negative 3 times a negative 3. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6 times a negative 3. Well, that would give me 18, but a positive times negative is negative. So your answer is negative 18. Now, the back of this worksheet is division. Division and multiplication are exactly the same thing with the process of integers. So I'm not going to do the back because it's the same process. My main goal right now is with multiplication because we want to make sure we got Dorita Man down pat. If you have any questions, reach out to me via email. Love y'all and see you soon.